I buried my confession under the lilac bushes behind City Hall 5 hours before the building caught fire. By sunrise, I'd be the only person in town who could prove I didn't light the match. They named the project Orchard District because the real name, bulldoze the riverside neighborhood and salt the earth with condos, didn't test well. When the first glossy mailers arrived, they showed watercolor peaches and children on scooters, and a fake historic plaque with a date they got wrong by 30 years. By the time the last of us noticed the small print, the council had already voted to issue bonds, the developer had already purchased the mill, and my house, my wife's lily beds, and the maples we'd tap for syrup with our granddaughter every spring were marked for demolition. My wife, Tessa, died the week I started digging. 2 years ago, a lung like a collapsed paper bag, a gallop of metastasis that had the indecency to outrun all those grand words. Protocols, adjuvant, targeted. I retired from teaching shop at the high school and took a part-time job at the shuttered paper mill because I couldn't stand the quiet. The mill paid me to supervise the shredders when the city brought over boxes, the end-of-year purge of everything they decided they didn't have to keep. I was good with machines. I was better with keeping my hands moving so I wouldn't punch a wall. On the night the first boxes arrived with city seals and orange auction stickers, I did something I'm not proud of. I jammed the shredder on purpose. A quarter turn on a loose chain, a paper clip palmed into the gears. I shut the machine down, pulled on the red tag, and told the driver I'd get to it in the morning. When the forklift left, I opened the top of the first banker's box. On the manifest, someone had written in clean, formal block letters, "Condemnation, Riverside." The top file was titled, "Notice of Necessary Acquisition," which is what someone writes when they feel guilty about the word theft. The second was a spreadsheet of parcel numbers with 3 columns of signatures. The third was a set of emails printed out so thick the staples had bent. Subject lines like quiet title, relocation assistance, address list. I wasn't looking for my name. I didn't want to see it. I flipped until I found a letter on letterhead from the developer, Pryor and Larson Holdings, to our city treasurer. It was polite. It referred to me in the third person. It misrepresented what I'd said at a meeting and turned "I'll consider offers" into "I consent." The letter was dated the same day I'd buried Tessa. I put that letter in a Ziploc bag. Then I took the whole box and slid it behind the broken pin stack at the back of the bay, up where the maintenance cat slept and none of the OSHA posters ever noticed. What they didn't understand about Riverside was that, yes, it was a poor neighborhood, and yes, the roofs sagged, and yes, the gutters needed paint, but every kitchen kept a scrapbook. We kept track. We knew who laid the foundation of which duplex and who patched the hole in which roof and who stole gas from whose grill when the power went out during ice storms. We could tell you the year the river came up and swallowed the picnic tables and spit up the playground swings 3 blocks away, and how the silt in the basement came with crawfish. We could tell you the month an out-of-town company started buying houses with cash offers that didn't seem to come from anywhere. Our history wasn't in plaques. It was in hands. I began keeping a ledger, thick as a Bible, of every box that arrived. I'd log the origin, the date, the titles, the scars on the cardboard, the coffee ring someone had left on an affidavit, the hair clip stuck to the back of an invoice like a fossil. I took only what might be proof, not secrets, evidence. The difference felt important, which is how I found the first forgery. I knew my neighbor, Mrs. Meena Patel, would rather flood her bungalow than let the city haul her house away. She'd promised to die on her own linoleum, and they'll need 6 men and a pulley to carry me. Yet there, in the file marked Voluntary Relinquishment Patel, was a signature in her name, very neat, no tremor. Meena wrote like a bramble. This signature was a highway. The notary stamp had the treasurer's initials. I slid that paper into the ledger and put a copy in a second bag. Then I took a picture and sent it to a reporter I barely knew, the young woman who'd stood in the back of every council meeting, writing with a pencil, not even flinching when people shouted. She'd once stopped by the shop when I was sanding canoe ribs with a freshman class and asked how many strokes it took to make cedar sing. She was curious in a way that made people better at telling the truth. Her name was Maya. 3 hours later, her reply, "Meet?" We met at the 24-hour diner on Route 6 because the coffee never mattered there. The waitress refilled your cup if you were awake. Maya had a notebook with corners chewed from being shoved in purses and under seats. Her hair was in a knot with 2 pencils stabbed through it, and she kept pushing a bandage on her finger like she was checking for a pulse. "You realize," she said, "if you're wrong, this is a felony. And if I'm right?" "If you're right," she said, "they're going to take your house faster." "I don't want to stop them because I'm scared," I said. "I want to stop them because I know how they're doing it." Maya smiled without teeth. "Good," she said. "Because I hate writing obituaries." We formed a system. I'd text when boxes arrived. She'd park in the far corner of the mill lot where the cameras blinked out. I gave her copies, never originals. She told me which documents mattered and which were just noise designed to look like compliance. She taught me phrases like chain of custody and probative and made me chant them until they stuck like prayers. "Emails without headers are candy," she said. "You want the wrapper. You want dates and servers and IP logs. You want the boring parts I took to sitting in the mill on my off nights, listening to the conveyor belt sing, watching the teeth on the shredder blink in fluorescent buzz. The foreman, a man called Stan with a gut like a bread bowl and a laugh like a dropped plate, let me because I fixed things without being asked and brought him Tessa's biscotti from the freezer. "Plenty of folks snoop," he said one night, wiping sawdust from his clipboard. "Most of 'em are looking for a tax bill they forgot to file. You're different." "How?" "You look like you're counting turns," he said. "Like you're building something in your head." He wasn't wrong. In shop class I had a rule: measure twice, cut once. For the mill plan, I measured 5 times. I counted everything. I rehearsed where to stand if a forklift drifted. I mapped the blind corners. I recorded when the cleaning crew stopped to smoke. I treated the city's habits like a machine I could disassemble and reassemble with improved tolerances. I didn't think of it as revenge. I told myself it was an adjustment, a correction, like tightening a drawer slide so it didn't slam. The first twist came not from them, but from us. Maya brought me a list of bond purchases for the Orchard Project, the people who stood to make money if the district went through. Most had Chicago addresses or pooled accounts with names that sounded like churches and rivers. 3 were familiar: the mayor's brother-in-law, the out-of-town consultant who had suddenly started caring about walkability, and the milk company that had quietly acquired the land with the stone foundation where our kids took prom pictures. 2 others had names I didn't know. "What am I supposed to see?" I asked. Maya pushed her glasses up. "Second to last line." I read it out loud. "Pryor and Larson Holdings. That's just the developer. Read it again," she said. "But think of private investors. Think of beneficial interest. Think of shell games." So I did, and when the letters on the page stopped being letters and became the thing they hid, I said the 2 words you say when your anger finally finds a face. "Oh." "Them, end game," Maya said. "When Orchard District sells its first penthouse, they pay themselves first." "Is that illegal?" I asked. She tilted her hand back and forth like a seesaw. "It's unethical," she said. "Illegal if they lied to the bond board. Illegal if they forged consents. Illegal if they moved public money to private accounts. But the water is murky. They make it that way. And you like murky?" "I like records," she said simply. "I like those more." We found more. We found 3 addresses that didn't exist. We found an environmental impact study copied word for word from a different city, so lazy they left in the other river's name. We found a letter from the treasurer reminding an assistant to sync that report with a smiley face drawn next to the word sync. We found, with a punch to the throat, an invoice for late-night disposal at the old quarry, just up the road from Tessa's chemo clinic, a place where kids had once learned how to skip stones. The waste was labeled slurry. The slurry had a warning code number I had to look up twice to believe. The night I read that code, I drove to the clinic at 3 a.m. and sat in the parking lot. When dawn finally drew the first slate on the lot, I went home and took out the bucket with our maple taps and threw them in the trash. The first attempt to stop us was polite. A letter from the city attorney to the paper where Maya worked, cautioning against unfounded allegations that might damage a public-private partnership. Her editor handed her the letter and told her to be careful. She taped the letter to her monitor like a pin-up. The second attempt involved the fire department showing up at my house saying they'd received an anonymous tip that I was storing accelerants. I let them in. They found paint thinner from 2003 and the corked bottle of spirits I'd used to clean the canoe before varnishing it. They took a picture and left. The third attempt was clumsy. The mill foreman called me on a Sunday, voice tight. "You didn't come in and jam the shredder, did you?" "No," I said. "Why?" "Because the city's boxes are already in pieces," he said. "Someone fed 'em by hand, jammed, fed, jammed. Looks like a kid trying to hide cigarette butts in the couch. Real stupid. Camera picked up a guy in a hoodie, but he walked behind the chipper where the blind spot is." "What did he take?" I asked. "That's the thing," Stan said. "Don't look like he took anything. Just made a mess. I'll clean it up." I went to the mill. Stan was there, arms folded, staring at confetti that used to be municipal government. He looked like someone had fried his breakfast wrong. "Tell me about the blind spot," I said. He turned. "It's your blind spot," he said. "You told me about it. It's where you hide your boxes when you want to. You know." I took a circle of paper from the pile and felt dizzy. The paper had a corner of a notary stamp. The notary's initials were the treasurer's again, that same little flourish on the T. Someone had destroyed a box and then left confetti in hopes of convincing the next guy there were no originals. But our originals were always safe. "I need a favor," I said. Stan sighed. "Is this the favor I think it is?" "I need to borrow your forklift," I said, "and I need you to take your lunch at exactly 2:30 tomorrow and leave the bay door open." He frowned. "I can't be part of—" "You won't be," I said. "You'll be outside smoking a cigarette." "I quit," he said. "I'll bring biscotti," I said. He stared at me. Then he said, 2:30. I don't know if you've ever driven a forklift with a heart full of mud, but the engine drone matches guilt. I lifted the city pallets, scanned the barcodes, slid 2 boxes from the middle of a stack, replaced them with blanks I'd labeled archives in my tidy hand, then drove the pallets back to the warehouse like I wasn't carrying months of my life in my chest. When I got home, I put the boxes in the crawl space where my granddaughter's finger paint handprints still marked the concrete. The fourth attempt to stop us wasn't an attempt. It was a success, and it wasn't targeted at us at all. The council voted on a Monday night with almost no one in the room. The bonds passed. The bulldozers scheduled arrival. Letters of possession went out. The city posted a cheerful timeline. Demolition in 90 days. Move in late 2026. The next morning, Meena Patel found an orange notice stapled to her porch and threw it at my door so hard the corner stuck. "They will not take my kitchen," she said to me, hand on her chest, breathing like a bull. "I will cook on top of their papers." "Then we don't let them," I said. She looked at me like I was a boy again. "I already do not let them," she said. "You must be more specific." The specificity came from Maya. "Chain of custody," she reminded me. "If City Hall burns their own documents, it's not proof. If you have documents you obviously took, it's not proof. You need an independent, like who?" I asked. "Like the state auditor," she said casually, as if she could conjure one with a pencil. "Or better, Somebody whose job is not elected or appointed by anybody here. The state auditor is a 2-hour drive, I said. Then we drive, she said. That was the day I buried my confession under the lilacs. Confession is the wrong word. It was a statement of acts, notarized by a woman who used to come to my shop to borrow clamps and who swore she didn't know what she was signing and didn't want to know. It listed, with page numbers, the boxes I'd seen and copied. It included photographs of the letters with timestamps and my ledger with dates and the chain of custody notes. It was dull on purpose. It was a map, not a novel. I placed it in a sealed manila envelope with my name, and I wrote in block letters on the outside, "To be opened if I am arrested or if anything happens to me." I buried it because even honest people get scared when someone bangs on the door at 2 a.m. We drove north on a road that used to carry logs and now carried SUVs with kayaks on top. I kept both hands at 10 and 2 and watched for deer and for police. Maya kept reading the same paragraph aloud until she could recite it without looking. The section where the ordinance required hand-delivered notices, not mailed, to any homeowner over 70. The part where written consent had to be signed in the presence of a witness who was not a city employee. The clause about conflicts of interest. The state auditor was a woman with hair cut close to her skull like a pilot's and a desk so clean you could perform surgery. She read the letter, slid the photos beneath a light, and pressed a button on her phone. "I'll need an investigator," she said into the receiver, "and someone to call the bond board." "And someone to call environmental. It's not about the environment," I said. She cocked an eyebrow. "Not yet," she said. We left with a receipt that said, in tight font, that she had accepted my materials. Outside, Maya leaned against the brick and laughed. "What?" I demanded. "I forgot," she said, "that sometimes the adults are adults." "So we won?" I asked, feeling dumb. She capped her pen. "We started." The first public sign that we were getting close arrived like an apology. The city treasurer posted a photo on her official feed of her dog sitting on City Hall steps with a caption that said, "Busy, busy. Transparency is our priority." The dog wore a bandana that matched the developer's logo. The comments were a bonfire. People began to post their own photos, orange notices, certified letters with wrong dates, addresses misspelled in ways that invalidated service. The city replied with a statement about misinformation and outsiders. I did not own a computer. I watched on my granddaughter's tablet after she fell asleep. I learned how to enlarge comments. I learned the particular way people spelled crook when they were typing with rage. The day before the fire, the state auditor called. Her voice was brusque and controlled. "2 things," she said. 1, environmental is taking your quarry note seriously. A crew is visiting tomorrow with the sheriff. 2, we need originals of the consents. We need to see where they kept them in City Hall, I said without thinking. 3rd floor, back room, metal cabinets with broken handles. A guy named Ricky who never wears socks. There was a pause. Then slowly she said, "Who told you that?" "Everyone always loses pens in that room," I said, "and the floor sags. You can feel it when you walk through the council chambers. And the HVAC goes out in summer, and they move the portable units in the hallway, and you can hear the rattling right above. And once when I was there to pay taxes, I saw Ricky walk by with a box that had a sticker. Consents. He wore no socks." "Okay," she said carefully. "Do not go to City Hall tomorrow." "Promise me?" "I promise," I said. I went to City Hall the next morning. I did not go inside. The lilacs were my wife's favorite. The scent was old soap and cathedral. The bushes behind City Hall were ancient, taller than a man, a whole wall of purple that in May made the pigeons dizzy. I approached them like a suitor, put my hand to the leaves, and wondered if, under the dirt, roots remembered the weight of all the confetti that had drifted here since 1890. I dug, placed my envelope, and covered it with soil. Then I took a picture and sent it to Maya with no caption. She did not reply. I drove to the mill. I was on my second coffee when the sirens started. Our town only has 2 trucks. The sound is a kind of thin scream that bounces off the river. I stood and could see the plume above the trees, black and then brown and then a white so bad it hurt to look. City Hall burned like the 4th of July. The second-floor windows belched paper that took flight as if learning too late how to be birds. The third floor sighed, like a man with a secret finally dropping it. Rickety fire escapes became iron in a blacksmith's forge. The treasurer's dog was not in the photo this time because someone had carried him out across a cop's shoulders with his paws dangling like a puppet. The treasurer herself, hair helmet, pearls, stood on the steps with the mayor and did not cry. The fire marshal said, "Electrical." A firefighter coughed a laugh and then coughed again for real. The state auditor arrived in a navy suit and did not try to get close. She stood with her hands in her pockets as if she were waiting for a bus. That night, the police came to my door with a warrant. They were polite. They were embarrassed. They had to do their jobs. The lead detective was a man who used to sit in my shop class and pretend he didn't want to build a birdhouse. He asked me if there was anything in the house he should know about. I told him there was a bucket of old maple taps in the garbage, and he looked confused. They searched my truck, my basement, my wife's sewing room. They found nothing. Then, neatly folded on the top shelf of my garage next to an old NCAA bracket, they found something wrapped in a grocery bag. Inside was a set of bolt cutters, a small gas can, a roll of duct tape, and a lighter with the developer's logo on it. "Those aren't mine," I said calmly. The detective nodded as if I'd said something about the weather. "We're going to need you to come with us." Maya wasn't answering her phone. The state auditor wasn't either. I thought about bolting, and then about my granddaughter, and then about Tessa. And then I stuck out my hands without being asked. "Don't do that," the detective said. "We're not there." In the interrogation room, they tried the usual: silence, a clock, 2 questions phrased different ways. I told them I had buried a confession behind City Hall, and the detective's mouth twitched. He sent a uniform to dig, and an hour later the envelope lay on the table, damp and smug. He read the first page and exhaled through his nose. "You can leave," he said, "for now." I went home and found the bolt cutters that weren't mine sitting on my kitchen table. The detective had forgotten them there. Or maybe he hadn't. Maybe it was a message. The frame was childish, beneath even our town. Maya showed up after midnight. She didn't knock. She was ash-streaked and shaking. She sat on my porch step and put her head on her knees. "Are you hurt?" I asked. She lifted her head. "He died," she said. "Who?" "Ricky," she said. "No socks, Ricky. He went back in, they think, to get a box." The ceiling fell. We were silent. The river talked to the rocks in the dark. "I thought you didn't answer because—" I started. "I was in it," she said. "I was there." They called media. They wanted it on camera. They wanted it to be electrical, tragic, inevitable. Then the auditor showed, and their faces. She stopped, swallowed. "Kate's here," she added. "Who's Kate?" "My mother," she said dully. I blinked. "I thought your mother was in Michigan." "She is." "And also here," she said. "She's the Larson and Pryor and Larson." The room tilted. "You didn't tell me," I said. "You would have treated me like a spy," she said. "I wanted to be a reporter first, and a daughter second." "What is she like?" I asked, because I had learned most of my life that it's better to ask your enemy's shape than to assume it. "Sharp," she said after a moment. "She can smell weakness. She believes she's right because she is cleaner than her partners. She's the one who uses cloth napkins and pays her staff well and can't quite understand why everyone thinks she's a villain. She doesn't steal," she says. "She executes. Does she know about us?" "She knows I know you," Maya said. "She thinks you're a grief project." "Am I?" I asked. Maya looked at my hands. "Yes," she said softly. "And you're also right." The next morning, the state auditor held a press conference. She did not say arson. She did not say electrical. She said she was retaining evidence. She said that certain consent files were known to exist and that her office had logged their presence prior to the fire. She said that while paper could burn, emails kept peculiar hours. Then she called on Maya first. "Do you have the backups?" Maya asked. The auditor smiled without teeth. "I have what I need," she said. They did. The city used a cloud service for email and had been behind on their bills since last winter. The cloud service, out of an abundance of covering their own existence, kept their data warm, waiting for a payment that never posted. A friend of a friend, no, not like that, legally, helped the auditor get a preservation order. The emails were safe. So were the invoices with wrong dates. So were the sink that report notes that the treasurer had typed with little hearts. Meanwhile, the quarry bled. The sheriff and the environmental agent took a backhoe to the place where kids once threw rocks. The slurry was gray and sticky and made the air smell like pennies. They unrolled a tube like an intestine and fed it into the pit. It came up with glitter. "What's the glitter?" the sheriff asked. "Paper," the agent said. "Only not paper. Look." She rubbed it. The glitter did not break. "These are fibers." "This is reinforced." "Reinforced with what?" he asked. She didn't answer. The lab did, 3 days later, a blend of polymer that was supposed to be used for a flood wall a town upriver had never built. The city had paid for it. The developer had billed for it. Without a wall, the river was only a mood. Insurance costs doubled. The developer bought insurance. Payouts weren't far behind. I wanted to tell Tessa that our river was a mood. She would have nodded. She had moods too. Storms that passed faster than the weatherman predicted. I checked the mail and found nothing but catalogs for kitchens I would never own. The second twist came when Maya stopped being a reporter and started being a daughter who had to wear a suit. She called me to meet at the diner. When I arrived, she was not alone. Her mother sat with her, hair precise, blazer the color of rain. "Mr. Whitlow," Kate said, standing. "I'm sorry about your wife." Hearing her say Tessa's name without saying it, like a person playing a song with every third note missing, made me want to flip the table. I nodded instead. "You're hurting," she continued. "I respect that. I am hurting too. This town hurts. I want to help fix it. The Orchard District is how we fix it." "By stealing from us?" I asked. My voice came out even. I was proud of that. She clasped her hands. "By making the river a place where your granddaughter can walk after dark. By building tax base so your schools don't have to sell cookies to replace expired inhalers. By remediating sites a city your size will never have the budget to remediate." "You filled the quarry with things that glow in a black light," I said. "That was a subcontractor," she said smoothly, "and we are cooperating." "You forged consent," I said. "We did not," she said, all ice. "Mina's signature?" I asked. "We have a notary," she said. "The notary is the treasurer," I said, "who stamped her own deals." Her eyes ticked. "She will be removed," she said, "and fined." "The bulldozers," I said. "Call them off." Her smile was patient, like a person explaining fractions to a child. I cannot stop a project because a grieving man and a very brave local reporter, my daughter, who is confused about how development works, have decided to make a federal case out of municipal cooperation. I am not the government. I am a partner. "You can stop," I said simply. "You can always stop." "Would you have stopped your wife's treatment after the first bad scan?" she asked. That was the only moment in the whole ordeal when I nearly threw a punch. I did not. I stood instead. When I spoke, my mouth felt far away. "You built your fortune convincing yourself other people's losses are collateral," I said. "You use words like capex and public-private and TIF because they make you sound like the river is a spreadsheet. But our kitchens are not cells. They are rooms with people in them. And you looked at them and saw coins." Kate watched me with a faint interest, as if I had been an unusual insect. She glanced at Maya, who was staring into her coffee like she might drown herself an inch at a time. "You've made a choice," Kate said to her. "You don't have to stick by it." We lift as we rise. "Come with me." Maya did not look up. "I need to finish my story," she said. "In that case," Kate said, "good luck being brave in a town that blames women for treason when they say no to their fathers." I didn't see Maya for a week after that. In the meantime, things moved like a pot about to boil. The state auditor filed formal notice that the bond board had been misled. The environmental team issued an injunction on digging anywhere within a mile of the quarry. The sheriff served a warrant at the treasurer's house. The mayor posted a statement with a typo in the word integrity. Then a letter arrived at my door with no return address. Inside was a photocopy of a handwritten memo, top corner burned, as if torn from a fire's mouth. Destroy consents. Move remaining to P.O. Box. Use bolt cutters. Chain room 3B. Gas and supply closet. There was no signature, but there was a smiley face. I carried it to the detective. He looked tired. "They're going to say you mailed that to yourself," he said. "What do you say?" I asked. He rubbed his forehead. "I say the treasurer's assistant is cooperating," he said. "I say the reason you got arrested and then not is that my captain and the mayor had a conversation, and I'm not supposed to tell you about it." "What else?" I asked. "I say the auditor is moving fast," he said. "I say check your tires." "Why?" I asked dumbly. He pointed. I turned. The rear of my truck sagged. I had 2 flats. Maya called that night. Her voice was a whisper. "She's leaving," she said. "Who?" "My mother. Pryor's already in Florida. Larson's flying out tonight after a listening session with the council. She thinks the case will take years. She wants to be in a city without seasons." "What do you need?" I asked. "I need a meeting," she said, "and I need you to trust me." The meeting took place at the school auditorium because the council chambers still smelled like wet smoke. The whole town came, or the part of it that owns good jackets. The people from the paper mill came in stained boots. The barber shop brought folding chairs. Mina wore a sari with peacocks and leaned on 2 grandsons holding thermoses. The mayor called the session to order like a priest trying to quiet a wake. The first speaker was the developer's PR guy, who used words that slid off like raincoat. Partnership, regrettable, isolated. He clicked slide after slide of flowers, like conjuring. People hissed. Then Kate Larson took the stage and the hissing stopped. She wasn't beautiful exactly, but she carried a geometry that made you think the angles in the building were wrong. She said the right things in the right cadence. She did not apologize. But at the end she said, "We will listen." Maya approached the microphone in a skirt she'd worn to debate team. She asked exactly 5 questions. Why was the letter of relocation assistance dated before the bonds were approved? Kate looked down, as if a small dog had barked. I would have to check with our compliance officer. Why did you reuse the environmental study from Port Kells? Maya asked. I don't recognize that town, Kate said smoothly. Why did your company register P.O. Box 117 in the treasurer's name? Maya asked. The whispering turned to a heavier sound like someone rolling a piano. Kate's smile didn't tremble. We didn't. I have your email to the assistant telling her to pick up the mail there on Thursdays, Maya said. No subject line. Just a peach emoji. The state auditor stood in the back, arms folded, taking notes with her eyes. Why did you advise the council to hold the vote when state had an open inquiry? Maya continued. Silence. The mayor cleared his throat. Kate waited. And last, Maya said, and her voice lifted. Why did you fly in tonight if you had already purchased a one-way ticket to Palm Beach? Why did you return if you had planned to leave once the fire made us stupid? The room remembered how to breathe. For a moment nobody spoke. Then Mina did, loud. Answer! Kate glanced at the PR guy. Then she looked at her daughter. I came, Kate said, for you. Maya nodded once. "Thank you," she said. "I'm recording." The recording went fine for 6 minutes. Then the building's power flickered. Only I noticed the flicker wasn't electrical. It was deliberate, a human thing, a hiccup with intent. I remembered Kate talking about Palm Beach and realized she would never risk being trapped here in a storm. She would have a ride ready, a way out that did not involve TSA. There was only one runway near enough for a private jet. The council lot had started to empty before the closing gavel. In the lobby, I could see a man with a phone to his ear and shoes too soft for our roads. I found Stan the mill foreman leaning against the cinder block wall, arms folded. He had come because his wife had told him to come. He was a man who did what the river said. "She's got a plane," I said. "She'll be gone before the minutes go online." He shrugged. "She's a bird," he said. "Not if the runway is muddy," I said. He looked at me. "You didn't," he said, a little grin starting. "I didn't," I said, "but I might." What we did would later be called obstruction by a lawyer on television who had never stood in rubber boots. I call it choreography. I texted 2 numbers I had never used for anything but jokes about the river level. Farmers with tractors who owed nothing to the city and everything to their land. I asked them if their fields were too wet to work. They said yes, and they had time. I asked them if they felt like rearranging some bales. They asked for what cause. I said, our kitchens. They came. We didn't block the runway. That would have been spectacular and stupid. We blocked the access road with a dozen tractors pretending to fix their tires. We stacked hay where hay did not belong and staged a social media moment about hay art that made it look accidental on the news. We left a corridor exactly wide enough for an ambulance and too narrow for a van. The van arrived 10 minutes after the session ended. The PR guy and 2 men with carry-ons hustled Kate toward it. She hesitated only once, when they passed the school gym doors in the cheerleading trophy case. She looked at a photo, a girl with big hair doing a split jump, and I swear I saw her remember knees that used to bend. They reached the van. The road was blocked by men sweating in a line who had all the time in the world. The driver leaned on his horn, and a farmer named Buck leaned on his elbow and looked at a cloud. Kate turned and saw me standing there with my granddaughter's tablet under my arm like a Sunday paper. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "For what?" she asked. "For what comes next," I said. "Which is?" she said, chin lifted. "An audit, an injunction, a series of subpoenas, and a very long story about a woman who believed she was too precise to be caught." "And your role?" she asked, almost kind. "I took things that weren't mine," I said. "I always will be sorry I had to." "I don't forgive you," she said. "I don't forgive you either," I said. The state auditor arrived beside me, not out of breath. The sheriff was with her. He had a folder. He said the word nobody expected him to say before morning. "Arrest," he said. The van door slid, slow as a can of paint opening. Kate did not argue. She held out her wrists after a pause and then drew them back. "No," she said. "I will walk with you." She did. Past the tractors, past the straw bales, past the men in boots who stared at her like she was a bird fallen from a power line. She held her spine as if balancing a book. When the cuffs clicked, everyone learned the particular sound handcuffs make on wrists that wear tennis bracelets. The treasurer ran 2 days later. She made it all the way to a cabin at the lake owned by her brother-in-law. She'd brought the dog. The dog bit a deputy. The deputy apologized to the dog. The mayor resigned with the phrase, "to focus on my family." His family posted on Facebook that they were focusing on Aruba. The quarry took years. The river does not forget quickly. But eventually the kids came back to skip stones, and when the pebbles hopped, the water did not hiss. The smell of pennies left. The frogs returned loud and impolite. The paper glitter washed out, gray ghosts drifting toward a new home in a secured container at a facility with 3 fences. Our houses did not get bulldozed. The maples stayed. The city restructured its bonds with a kind of shamefaced elegance and a state-appointed consultant who said "capex" twice, and then realized nobody here wanted to hear it again. The auditor came back with a haircut, a little less strict, and stayed for cake at the senior center. Stan quit smoking for real. The mill got a contract to recycle things with value again. The developer's office downtown became a co-op where high school students built wooden skiffs and learned the words planer, kerf, and true. Maya wrote until her hands cramped. She wrote like a flood. Her first article was titled Chain of Custody, and she put our names in it like she was planning them, each with a sentence that told how they'd worked and what they'd risked. She did not write about her mother, except to say this: she believed she was saving us from ourselves. She made a ledger and weighed us like stones. She forgot we float. The case against Pryor and Larson seemed immortal. It sprouted heads like a hydra. Securities, environmental, fraud. The press covered the big city parts and left the small town parts alone. We went back to sweeping our porches. We went back to checking each other's gutters when storms were coming. We went back to making soup. In late fall, I took my granddaughter to the garden center to buy a sapling. She picked a pear because the leaves looked like coins. "We should plant it in the orchard district," she declared with the certainty of 6. "Where would that be?" I asked her. She pointed to our yard. We dug a hole where Tessa had liked to sit with her book, the place where the sun comes in sideways in September and turns everything into a photograph. I showed my granddaughter how to scuff the roots, how to mound the soil, how to flood the hole and let it settle. We tamped with our heels. She patted the trunk like a pony. "What will we name it?" she asked. "Orchard," I said. "That's not a name," she said. "It is now," I said. At the dedication of the new Riverside Park, funded by 3 lawsuits and a special grant nobody had known existed until the auditor made a call, we planted 7 more trees. Mina cut a ribbon with a pair of shears that had once been used to trim hedges behind City Hall before the fire. The plaque said simply, "Here are kitchens. Here are hands." The last twist came too late to hurt us. 6 months after the arrests, after the first court dates, after the first smug statements by defense counsel about overreach, an investigator found something in the ashes of City Hall. A kind of miracle in aluminum. In the sagging room where they kept the consents, where the HVAC had piped summer into spring and loose nails had found their way into shoe soles for generations, there had been thin foil insulation behind the cabinets. When the room burned, heat baked the cabinet backs and sucked the oxygen, and the papers inside didn't combust. They browned. They crisped. They turned to fragile tablets with signatures still visible if you looked at a certain angle with polarizing lenses. It took weeks for a conservator to realize what they were. It took 3 days for the state auditor to sign the chain of custody forms. It took 1 morning for a judge to admit the evidence. There is a photograph of that evidence in the paper. It shows a hand in a cotton glove holding a sheet that looks like toast. At the bottom, where the signature should be, a line is empty. The notary stamp is clear. It is a treasurer's flourish without a witness. Beside the blank, the smallest smiley face. I saved that photo on my granddaughter's tablet and showed it to her when she was old enough to understand how paper can both burn and not. "Why did they draw a smile?" she asked. "To make it look like something good," I said. "Did they believe it?" she asked. "Probably," I said. "Did you?" she asked. "No," I said. "But I believe something else." "What?" she said. "That the people who sign things should not be the only ones who can read," I said, "and that a river is a mood, and that kitchens are courts, and that if you bury a letter under lilacs, you should water it like a seed." She thought about that. Then she ran to climb the pear tree and ripped the knee of her leggings on a low branch and laughed like bells. The trial took 2 years and did not have the scenes people like to watch in movies. There was no shouting and few tears. There were spreadsheets. There were dull affidavits read in soft voices. There were chain of custody exhibits that took 30 minutes to describe, and a single moment that felt like lightning when the judge said, "Guilty, guilty, guilty." The developers paid in money and in time. The treasurer went to prison and taught a bookkeeping class there that I hope she resented. The mayor moved to a townhouse near the highway and learned to wheel his trash to the curb. Maya's mother did not go to prison. She cut a deal. Her punishment was more elegant, a bar on doing business in the state for a decade, and a fund she had to endow with her own money to teach municipal officials how to avoid being fooled by people like her. She started the first seminar with a talk titled, "The River is Not a Spreadsheet." I did not attend. They sent me a thank you letter with a stamp I saved because I liked the bird. On the first spring day that the lilacs bloomed again behind the rebuilt City Hall, smaller now, with windows that opened, I walked there with my granddaughter and brought a trowel. We dug under the bushes, not to look for anything, but because she liked the way the roots looked like hair. A groundskeeper watched us and did not ask questions. We put the dirt back and patted it smooth. The bush shook itself once as if shuddering off a bad dream. "Do you miss her?" my granddaughter asked. "Every day," I said. "Did we win?" she asked. I looked at the people walking up the steps with coffee cups, at the clerk holding a stack of permits like a baby, at the metal cabinets in the back lit by honest sun. I listened for the river. "Yes," I said, "but the kind of winning where you have to keep showing up." She took my hand. "Okay," she said. "We can do that." We walked to the park. We watched a boy learn to ride a bicycle on the new path, his father trotting behind him with one hand on the seat and the other ready. The pear tree put out its first small fruit. A woman from the quarry site came over with a jar of soil she said was clean enough to eat on toast, and we didn't, but the idea made me happy. In the distance, a siren started and then stopped. The sound didn't feel like a threat. It felt like the town clearing its throat. On the day the state auditor announced she was running for nothing and would serve out her appointed term and then go home to the lake, the paper ran an editorial with a sentence I copied out and taped to my fridge. "We were not saved by a hero. We were saved by work." When people ask me now why I did it, why a man without a computer and with a house full of grief and a granddaughter with a stubborn cowlick decided to pull at a thread longer than any patience, I tell them this: I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m, all the words they used, partnership, revitalization, sounded like someone sanding wood against the grain. I wanted the grain to show. I wanted the drawer to slide without sticking. I wanted, more than revenge, the sound you get when things fit, click. And because people always need a confession they can hold, I tell them another thing, something that feels like a secret and is not. The letter under the lilacs was not the only thing I buried. I buried a small sack of pear seeds I'd saved from a tree at my wife's sister's house. Seeds that did not know court dates or bond markets or how to spell integrity. I like to think that someday the roots will find the envelope and curl around it and hold it like a bone, and that the lilacs will drink ink and thrive, and that behind City Hall the air will be full of a smell that reminds everyone of old soap and cathedrals and kitchens where people learned to say no. This is not a fairy tale. The river floods some springs. The city misplaces invoices still, though less often. The auditor is human and once forgot to RSVP to Mina's grandson's wedding. The developer's PR guy writes a newsletter in Miami about lessons learned. Kate sits on a board for a charity that teaches kids to code. My truck sometimes stalls in winter. The battery is older than it should be. Stan's biscotti are too hard if you don't dunk them. But the orchard in Riverside grows. The first year the pears were small and tart. The second year they had a sweetness that made you think of syrup and late light on leaves. My granddaughter knows how to graft now. She has a knife I trust her with. She cuts and presses and binds and waits. She believes waiting is work, not a pause. That is a kind of ending that isn't an end. When I pass City Hall, I slow down. I look at the back where the lilacs bool and the ground is tidy. I think of Ricky with no socks and the cabinet backs, and the way paper turned to toast and still told the truth. I think of the word consent and what it should mean and how quiet it sounds when it's real. I think of my ledger, fat as a Bible, now in a box my granddaughter decorated with stickers that say things like power to the people and glitter that will never rot. And I think of the first day we opened it and how the room rushed with air like a lung filling. I buried my confession under the lilac bushes behind City Hall 5 hours before the building caught fire. By sunrise, I wasn't a suspect. By winter, we had a park. By the time the pears came in, we had enough to share. I took a sack to Mina and a sack to Stan and a sack to the state auditor, who laughed and said she didn't have much of a sweet tooth, but her partner did. I left a sack on the step of the treasurer's sister because I didn't know what else to do with the rest, and because winning should taste like something. And on the last warm night in September, I carried 3 pears to the river, cut them with my pocket knife, and threw the cores in. They bobbed like boats, then sank, then turned with the current toward the quarry and the park and the mill and all the kitchens where people were eating dinner. The water took them. The mood was good. The sound it made was a click.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.